This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Welcome to the Bristol Flyers Podcast with Joel Osborne and Sam Hardy, presented by UWE Bristol, and this is episode 12 with head coach Andreas Kapoulas and assistant coach Nick Burns. It's not too often that we get to sit down with both coaches in their busy schedules, but it was a great interview that Sam and I have just recorded. We reflect on the 2021-22 season, which saw a first ever top four finish for the Flyers and a playoff semi-final and a trophy semi-final as well. We talk about the highs and lows of the season and a quick look ahead to player recruitment ahead of next season as well. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get underway. We're going to try and bring you a lot more of these episodes during the off-season as all the latest news comes in. Our next episode that we've got lined up will be with the Bristol Flyers Supporters Club as we announce the results of their votes for the Supporters Club End of Season Awards. So do look out for that episode when it drops. We're going to announce them here on the podcast. So this will be the first place where you can find out the winners of their awards, which include Player of the Year, Most Improved Player from the start to the end of the season, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, and Champagne Moment, which is their best moment / highlight of the 2021-22 season. If you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe via your usual podcast provider. Do give us a rating and a review. It really helps us bring you more of these episodes going forward. But without further ado, let's get to our season review episode with Coach Andreas Kapoulas and Coach Nick Burns.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Want it all? You'll find it here. Because at UE Bristol, we empower students to make a choice, to choose a community of bright minds and courageous thinkers, to choose to stand out, with courses designed to equip you with the most in-demand skills, to choose a mindset, the kind that employers want and need. Don't just choose a city, don't just choose a course, choose to do university right. Choose UE Bristol, not just another university. But don't just take our word for it, search UWE Bristol today.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Well, welcome back to the Bristol Flyers Podcast, sponsored by UWE Bristol. And right now, we are joined by Flyers head coach Andreas Kapoulas and assistant coach Nick Burns. Guys, thanks a lot for taking time out your day to join us here in person, which is great because obviously the last time we did this, it was all on Zoom, wasn't it?
Thank you for having us. It's nice to do it face-to-face, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, strange. It's a bit more nerve-wracking face-to-face rather than on Zoom. I have no idea why, but this is a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have, obviously, right now, the season's just wrapped up. I imagine you've had a few days to sort of digest the events from the playoff semi-final. What was your overriding feeling of like the whole season after that buzzer went on Sunday?
Well, I mean, certainly there is a bit of disappointment. You're in a playoff semi-final, you know. You want to advance and make history and be in the first playoff final ever. So certainly there is the feeling of, you know, what could have been. But at the same time, really proud for what we achieved. And it has been a fun season, without question. So, you know, there is that initial disappointment for not being able to progress further. And the reality is when it comes to playoffs, you know, you either got to have tears of joy or tears of sorrow. And it's one of those things. You're either going all the way and winning it, or at some point you're out of the competition and you know, your season is over. So, but certainly really proud of our achievements. And I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit more about it in a second. So I think there were the raw feelings basically there in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it's like Sunday seems a long way away now. It's been one long exhale for me this week, really, because the weeks before, maybe months before, I don't know. The weeks before, you never unwind. I mean, for me, it must be much worse for Andreas, but I am sort of part time. I do try and dip in and out with Flyers, but you can't do that when the season's on and when you're going for playoffs. The elastic band never quite stretches back again. So when it does come to the end and suddenly it stops. And it'll just stop straight away like that. It takes a bit of getting used to. So it's, just unwind, exhale.
Yeah, it does. It does suddenly stop, doesn't it? Like you say, like we literally had our last home game and then you don't really know what's going to happen on the away leg and everyone comes off the court and that's like, and now that's it. There's nothing. There's no more games. There's nothing now until September. We all sat here around 6 months ago, reflecting on a season behind closed doors. And obviously we started with fans slowly coming back. They came back in drips and drabs. But towards the back end of that season, I think, I don't know about you, Sam, but probably the loudest I've heard in those. I mean, you weren't there for that first playoff game, but that second playoff game against London, probably the loudest I've heard Flyers at the SGS probably ever.
Well, we always put like plenty of sounds on to make people listen and get involved and get as loud as they can. But for those last two games, we didn't have to do anything because the fans were just leading the way, getting absolutely nuts. And I don't know if you really notice it when you're courtside because you're sort of in the zone, but does it make a difference in that way?
It does. I can remember the earlier in the season and even sort of January time, Joe, when you always ask me the same questions in my pre-game interviews. You know, how much you get of the crowd going to be important? and for a lot of the season, I was saying, yeah, crowd are great. They're not quite there yet. They're not quite back. They're still relearning it after lockdown. But it was that all of a sudden you noticed it in those last few games. You thought, hang on a minute, this is like it used to be, where you can't hear Andreas in the timeouts, and it's just crazy loud. And I think Chris and you probably see us on the film of the games, actually not even bothering to listen in on the timeouts late in the game because we couldn't hear anything, so it was a bit pointless. And I have to say, on Sunday at Copperbox was the same. That group of fans we had, I don't know how many were there, but there was the last couple of timeouts, I almost felt like turning around and saying, "Can you shut up? We want to hear what Andreas is saying." They were really loud, even just a few of them. So yeah, it definitely late season got back to normal.
Is that something you noticed as well, Andreas, that as the season wore on, the crowd suddenly, you could tell that playoffs were coming, couldn't you?
I mean, like, playing behind closed doors in pandemic was an experience we never want to have again. I mean, just, it's so difficult to get going. And the thing is, the reality is, through the years, I mean, the atmosphere at Wise has been unbelievable. And, you know, you're looking back at some of the greatest moments that we've had as a club. I mean, the place has been rocking, you know, buzzing. And we haven't had that. So to all fairness, it's very difficult to even think how that used to be. And what I know is that certainly that second leg against Manchester, it just brought back memories of how it used to be. Now, was that the loudest I've ever heard the place? It's very difficult to say. But it certainly was loud, and Nick is absolutely right. You could not listen to me, and it's just great because it was almost like playing behind closed doors didn't happen, and we're back to normality, if you want to call it. And I think the other thing is, and I'm sure Nick will agree, I think we feed off the energy of our fans, but also we give the energy to our fans, and certainly the way our team was playing and the heart they were showing had a lot to do with the atmosphere. So it's a two-way thing, really, I think so.
And not even just the way they're playing. You've got people like TJ who just go in hard and get the crowd going, hands up in the air. Like the personalities of some of those guys this year has been amazing to see them get everyone involved, and I've really enjoyed seeing that happen.
And I think I've seen, like, from being around the team as well, what's it been like off the court? Because there's lots of personalities on the team, but whenever I've come in to sort of do things with the players or ask the players to do things, it seems like the chemistry has been really there all season long, no matter whether there's, you know, they're on a losing streak, whether you guys are winning games. The chemistry was probably the best I've seen a Flyers team. I
mean, you know, if you ask any of us, I think they will say the same thing about the chemistry. There was a special connection, you could tell it. I mean, it has been fun. I mean, we have some amazing moments in practices and change rooms and all sorts. You know, we're a younger team, and I think some guys knew each other from before, even though they hadn't necessarily played together. But our chemistry was really what kind of made this season be what it has been, and I think speaks volume about the character of the players and their personalities and everything, and it just clicked, you know. And I think through the injuries and different guys contributing and everything, I think that chemistry was even present when, you know, guys were not necessarily playing; they were just out, kind of thing, of rotation because of injuries and things like that. And I think there was a real connection between the guys, really, that you can notice, and I think certainly the leadership that Josh and Raf brought to the group, basically, and their experiences from before helped that. we knew that we needed to have that. And you just don't know how things will go. But from the get-go, you could tell there was something there going. And as we're going deeper in the season, I think that character and that chemistry led to our success, I think.
I think that is where the crowd is important, though, because to be fair to last year's group, I mean, I can remember you doing a podcast on the bus, I think, when we went up to Glasgow, which was good fun to listen to and showed that there was there was good camaraderie last year's team as well. But what was really hard last year was that Andreas referred to it a minute or two ago when he said the crowd couldn't get you going if you were on a bit of a rut, and maybe you'd hit a shot after you've been down for a bit, and normally did that get the crowd going, and that never happened last year, and it was hard. And if you had a loss last year, if you have a home loss this year, you can go and kind of meet the crowd towards the end of the season and have a chat with the crowd, and the crowd will say, "Oh, great game, it was really entertaining," and it kind of just grounds everybody. But last year that didn't happen. Last year it was just whatever happened, win, lose, it was the same 15 guys you'd see after the game, Monday morning, the Tuesday night on the bus. It was just the same guys all the time, and it becomes very, very hard when everybody's motivates themselves the same way. Everybody got their own mental approaches to the game to kind of not motivate yourself, but if you're on a downturn, to lift up, it's very difficult to do. It was very difficult to do last year in the lockdown situation. So it was really tough on those guys. And I said to a few of them at the end, it was a real shame that they weren't able to play in front of the crowds and to get that appreciation, get that lift, get that support, genuine support, and see it in person. So it was hard for those guys. But I think this year you really saw, because we had some bad moments, didn't we?
Of course.
And that is where the second the crowd gets behind you when you do get on a bit of an uproll, it's a totally different situation this year to last year. So I think that's what a big part of what the crowd did to help this year was to help that good chemistry germinate. I suppose you don't get many gardening metaphors off me, do you? But I'll put that one in. That might be a first and last.
The other thing, some of the best part after the game, the post game, was like watching the players' interviews. I mean, you talk about chemistry. I think those player interviews, I think they're fantastic. And some of the moments on the bus, like there was the one where watching the London game versus Manchester, and I mean,
Nando's all round.
What was happening on that bus on the way back? I mean, it was hilarious, and it just kind of it feeds into that whole chemistry element, basically.
Yeah, and you talk about the team from last year, the team to this year. It was a complete rebuild, wasn't it? I mean, a couple of players retained from that squad from last year. A very young team you put together this year, like all the Americans under the age of 25. The only real veteran was Shane on the team. Of course, with Josh and Raf as that leadership that have been around from year in, year out the last couple of seasons. But 14 wins, 13 losses in the regular season, 2 semi-finals. When you look back at the goals and the targets that were set out at the start of the season, do you feel you met those targets or exceeded those targets?
Oh, well, we certainly met the goals, I think, for the season. I mean, the first thing is, we talked about that with the team. When I met with Josh, it was about having a fun season. Last year with the pandemic and having no fans, I mean, it was difficult. I mean, Nick talked about it, kind of thing. So it was a fun season. And we're very proud of our achievements. We were talking about making playoffs, trying to get a winning record, and certainly in terms of progressing to a trophy semi-final, and then securing top 4 finish. And it was fine line. You're looking back you had 10 games in 23 days, and a lot of things have to go your way there, kind of thing, because there was a point that we could be out of the playoffs. So I think certainly finishing top 4 and just making the semi-finals and progressing to the playoff semi-final, I think it has been goals that we wanted to achieve. But at every season, and we talk about it with Nick, we're saying, what's a successful season for the Flyers? Certainly making the playoffs and finishing as high as we can up the league table, and really securing a winning record. There's a lot of things that you cannot, we'd never go like, oh, we want to be in the top 4 or anything like that. We're building. It's in terms of where we are with our program, and I think we've met the goals. Some could say we exceeded things, But it has been a great season basically overall.
Yeah, I think you start off thinking, well, target one, we want to win something, if not top 4, winning record. That's how you sort of scale down the targets really. So I think overall, especially in terms of maybe what was projected by the experts, if I call them that, at the start of the season, we probably did overachieve a little bit. But I think it's difficult to say really. It was a good season because I think the attitude of the team, the entertainment they provided, they put a lot of smiles on faces at the end of the season. Ultimately, we're in the entertainment business. I know the individuals, as professionals, want to succeed and get their wins, their championships, their medals or whatever. But I think certainly we gave value for money when we were playing, for sure. And I think you've got to take a lot of satisfaction from that. The players certainly should do.
And it was a rebuilding year. And we need to remember that suddenly, when you're bringing only 2 players from last year's back, I mean, there's a lot of things. We work really hard on the recruitment, but there's a lot of things that you don't know how they're going to plan out, really. But it has been a very good facelift, and I think there were some defining moments in our season across, and I think we're particularly proud about the toughness our group showed because, being a young team, there is a certain inexperience, if you want to call it, and there are certain situations that arise throughout the course of the year, and you just don't really know necessarily which way it's going to go. And I think our youth was part of the success. I think the energy that guys had and the toughness and the grit and the chemistry were key components of what goes to this point. So you're looking back at it at the start and you're saying, what we wanted to do, and you look at it now and you're going like it has been a hell of a year, basically.
I don't think, certainly from my point of view, there's not a lot of what-ifs about this season. I think previous seasons, there's usually at the end, you look back at it and said, well, if we'd have recruited differently here, if we'd have done that differently, if we'd have taken a different style, if we'd have tried that. There's no what-ifs this year. And I don't think the players should have any in the end in the championship we were beaten by a very talented team. And losses are going to happen through the season. You're going to get beaten. That happens to everybody. You take wins and losses. But I think overall, I don't think we'll be looking at it and saying, we what if we'd done that differently? And the players shouldn't be either. And that's another way, I think, to rate it and say, that we did okay.
I think it's really hard to remember sometimes how young they really are. Like, you just see these professional athletes and it's like, yeah, they, that's who they are. And what I saw this year was some absolute bravery from them. They just went in hard. They didn't hold back a lot. And actually, I think maybe sometimes experience stops that a little bit. I don't really know. I've not worked with too many guys that much, but they went in so hard at times when maybe they, didn't. Other people might not have done that. I was really amazed at what they achieved this year.
Yeah, I mean, Corey Samuels was very keen to point out, wasn't he? He gets very annoyed when people refer to him as, young Corey. I'm only a year younger than Zach. So.
I was just about to say that as well. So.
You look at some of the numbers. I mean, 18 or so games were decided by 5 or less points. You guys were 7 and 11 in those games decided by 5 or less. There's a lot of chat as well in the from the media, from the externals about how Flyers finish games. But you certainly, towards the back end of the season, certainly started getting those results to go your way. And the league could have turned, in going into April, you had 12 games in 24 days, and you still could have finished anywhere from second all the way down to ninth. The season at that point probably could have gone one of two ways, couldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that happened throughout the course of the year. I mean, we had to battle with injuries, having some of our players, someone like Mike Miller was out for almost a 3-month period, basically. But we had a tough group, and the great thing about our group is different guys stepped up at different moments for us. And Nick mentioned Corey. Suddenly you lose one of your import players for such a long period, and here comes Corey, who is not afraid of anything and just throws himself about. And we're talking about toughness, and you're talking about playing with heart. Who better to do than a guy that has come through the program, basically, right? And I think he was great for us. And I think with those close games, I mean, we are a young team. We knew that. I mean, our average age, as you said, Shane was the older player. Our average age was 25. So the youngest in the league, in effect. And actually, from the guys playing on the floor, because, other teams can say, oh, they have so-and-so in the roster, but we're talking about guys that are actually playing, making an impact. So that comes a little bit with some inexperience. But the thing is, in every game, and there were no layoff, if you think about it. I know there were some games that we came from behind, but there were no layoff games that we went down big. I mean, we were in every game looking teams straight in the eyes. And sometimes it was just closing out games when we had the lead rather than actually coming back from behind. And yeah, there were some of the games that we came back from behind as well. And it was about a matter of time. It was a matter of consistency on the roster as well, because, if you look back at it, it wasn't even just Mike. You will see like guys going in and out every couple of games in terms of injuries. If it was, maybe Marcus being out for a couple of games and someone else coming in, it could be a number of factors. So we needed a little bit of time. And certainly, we had some disappointing losses, some close losses and stuff. And you can look back at a couple of games. Certainly that Sheffield game kind of probably sticks out in everyone's mind, especially it was in such a point of the season. Such an important point of the season. You're going, okay, where do we go from there? I mean, we're all gutted in that game. But I think the character of the group allows us to deal with that. And I think, again, it goes back to the players, how they reacted from that loss and how they believed in each other. But also the fact that we had everyone back and everyone was playing, because we didn't have that till that point of the season, really. And I think that was, that one of the contributing factors where we were able to close out games, because we had that consistency a little bit. And it's a lot of things. It's like rotations. When guys are out, your rotations are different. Guys have to play more time. Guys need rhythm, all that kind of stuff. But even towards the end, like someone like Corey and Jake, who have been there for us when we had some of the other injuries, they were coming back with injuries, so they were trying to find the rhythm. And it's a little bit like that. And I think. It was great to finish the way we did, basically, and I think it was just a matter of time. Some of it maybe perhaps was a little bit psychological, but the attitude that the group showed, irrespective of the result, and I think Nick will agree with me, irrespective of the result on a Friday or a Sunday, the way guys would come back on Monday with the right attitude to improve things. And even after that, I remember the meeting that we had after the loss to Sheffield. Like everyone was determined to put things right. And I think that's kind of what sticks out in my mind when it comes to those guys, basically.
Yeah, that was the Dan Routledge statistic, wasn't it, that one? I had 15 of the games were 3 points or less. That's over a third of our games were 3 points or less. That's a one-possession game. Now, and most of those close ones we lost, but we won a lot of them. And you can look at that at different ways, can't you? But I think we were in a lot of games we shouldn't have been in. And it was some of the criticisms we were getting, you were thinking, well, we're being criticised here for losing close games. It's almost like if we'd have lost by 20, the results have been the same win-loss in the league table. People would have said, oh, yeah, Bristol, mid-table, about where they ought to be, everything's fine, and not said anything about it. I think we almost became victims of our own toughness, really, and that we were keeping games very close. But at late games, all sorts of things that you could look at individual games. They always come down to, individuals making plays. Whether it's a shot block. We remember Malcolm's shot block against Manchester. I mean, they had the last shot. They had a good look. Are they looking at that game and thinking we messed up there because we didn't do the play right? It was a top play. The Kofi Joseph's shot. It needs good shooters to come out and make the shots. I mean, I still remember we talked about this all season. The first game of the season, we beat Leicester by a point at Leicester. Connor Washington had a wide open three in the corner. He'll make that 50% of the time. He missed it. Does that make the win? We won the game. We're heroes. That shot goes in. We've blown it. The Sheffield game on TV when they had those 15 tips on the buzzer that didn't go in. I mean, it could have been worse. But it comes down in the end to people making plays and a little bit of bounce of the ball, luck, refereeing decisions, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, those close ones that we always seem to be involved in, we lost a few more than we won. But at the end of the day, we were still top 4. Got to the quarterfinal of the playoffs. I'm not complaining. If people want to tell us we got no bottle, then they can go and think it. But that's what I think.
It might have given us an extra chip on our shoulder as well. Throughout the whole season, we were talking about underdog mentality. No one was talking about us in the off season. No one. They were not talking. They might have been talking about London, Manchester kind of thing, Leicester, all those other different teams kind of thing, but no one was talking about Bristol. And I think we all know we're going with underdog mentality. We had to have that. And the way we recruited kind of was playing into that. And certainly people talking, I think, gave us maybe the extra little motivation, if you want to say that.
I think to be fair, because I maybe have a go at experts, I think the experts were recognising the fact that we were tough and resilient and competitive. But a word I heard was flawed, which, well, we will be, because, when you're looking at the sort of players we get, the budgets you're going with, you're going to get players that are going to be flawed somewhere, and it's about getting the best out of them. And, coming back to what Andreas said, I think the way they approach things, they worked as hard as they could to get the best out of themselves individually and collectively. You can't ask for more than that. As coaches, can't ask for more than that.
It's funny, you mentioned those games against Leicester, of course, beating Leicester twice, once on the opening day of the season, once knocking them out of the BBL trophy as well. The rest of the games, bar one, decided by 3 points or less against the Riders. You guys matched up really well against them this year. Is there almost like a sense of, not what if, but maybe like in that playoff semi-final where if maybe you'd taken a bigger lead into that second leg, that you would have fancied your chances in a one-off game against a team like Leicester in the final at all?
Leicester have been the most consistent team in the league. There's a reason, the league champions, they've only dropped 2 games, I think, the whole of the regular season, which is unbelievable. So, going against Leicester is never easy. And especially in a playoff final, their experience, their players, their talent. They know they've been there kind of thing. So it's never going to be going easy in that type of situation. Certainly, we will have taken confidence from the fact that we've had so many close games against them. We're a very physical team. We're a very tough team. And I think we do that against Leicester better than anyone else this season. And I think that's what kept us in those type of games, I feel. So, and certainly beating them in that first game in the Cup and, being able to knock them out of the trophy. But as Nick said, in both those games, they had such potentially they had gone in, we might not have won. And the other, close games, I think the last one, Crandall made a big 3 kind of thing down the stretch, basically. And, if that 3 had not gone in, maybe we'll have had a win there. Or if, TJ had a look at it, he took an extra bounce, potentially, he might have made that shot, it could have gone a little bit further and maybe we'll have beaten them in league play. At the end of the day, you don't know what will have happened in the playoff final. I think we match up well against Leicester, but at the same time, we know how good Leicester is. So, and there's no easy games in the BBL. We're talking about Leicester. Every game in the BBL is tough. And I think, the league is improving all the time. The talent level in the league, from the first year that we came to the league to now, it just, I think, is improving so much, and you can see the difference. And who knows what we could have been if we were in a playoff final. But I think overall, I think those Leicester games, has shown us early in the year, has shown us the potential of our group, basically. And I think that was great to see.
Yeah, Leicester and London are the 2 most difficult teams to beat by a distance. But they are completely different styles of team. They have completely different strengths and weaknesses, which is why it'll be such a good final. It'll be a really interesting one to watch.
Who's your money on?
If it was a case of money, I'd probably be backing the one that was the bigger price. I think it could, because it could go. It could go either way.
That's a very diplomatic
answer. It's yeah. God, we could analyse this game to death, couldn't we? You just think about London in the fourth quarter when we won our game down there. I think they scored 8 points in the fourth quarter. I don't want to know how many they scored on Sunday, but they, even down to that, you think about how close games are. They, have that ability to explode and implode probably. So I'm just going to enjoy watching it. I think it'd be Be a real interesting one. 50-50. All right, if you pin me down, I'll say London because I know he's going to say Leicester. So I go, if you absolutely, there you go. Let's.
You got Leicester, coach?
I mean, just to make it interesting, probably I will have to now, right? So it would not be a good podcast if I was to say London as well. We've got to make it a little bit kind of controversial. I mean, the shot-making ability, the talent, the guys that can make shots for London, I mean, it's incredible. And you saw that in the second leg against us, especially in the second half. Leicester have been so consistent throughout the course of the year. Defensively, I think they're the best that London will have to go against. If it's a half-court game, Leicester will win it. If it becomes more transition and more of an open game, I think London have a chance. I will probably have to go with the most consistent team in Leicester. But, it's going to be a great. I think it's going to be a great game of basketball. And the one thing I would say about London, they're in form. Some of their guys, due to injuries, other reasons, kind of thing, they have been out. They're a little bit more fresh, perhaps, coming into this. Dirk Williams is back, and he certainly looked in form in our second leg game against us. So they are definitely the informed team. But Leicester have been very consistent. So I'll go with Leicester, just to make it interesting.
And they told us before they were putting £1,000 each on this. So.
That would be a very good meal.
I'm just thinking about the concept of putting your money on London. Crikey, they could be anything. But it will be a fun watch for sure.
Yeah, certainly will. One thing we didn't necessarily cover too much, I mean, we touched on it very briefly, but of course that injury to Mike Miller, he obviously out for nearly 3 months of the season, and then you brought in Antwain Johnson halfway through the season, and it's a tricky one in that kind of situation because so many teams we've seen in the league in BBL history, when a player gets an injury like that for that length of time, it's so easy for teams to just cut that player, release them, and just bring in a replacement for the rest of the season. But you stuck with Mike and brought in a replacement, and that must have been quite a tough situation to deal with. But from Mike's point of view, I mean, I think we said it in previous interviews, but it was all about the team for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it never crossed our mind to send Mike home. I think bringing Antwain, we said it was going to be a short-term arrangement till Mike gets back. We just could not get a definitive timeline on Mike coming back. And when it's different with injuries because you have a definitive timeline, then everyone knows basically. The player knows, so he can have that in his mind. When you don't have a definitive timeline, that takes its toll. And I thought Mike, the way he dealt with it was incredible. Really, I mean, he was so about the team, motivating guys, just a lot of things that people don't see behind the scenes. And when you're out for that long, you think about yourself. I mean, instinctively, you're going to do that kind of thing. You say about people not being selfish or anything like that. You're in that type of situation. A lot of things are going through your mind. And Mike dealt with it exceptionally well, as well as I've kind of think a person can deal with it, really. And we wanted Mike back, and we were prepared to wait. And it was great that we were able to get a definitive timeline and to have him back on the floor. But and his performances, he needed time to find his rhythm. I mean, he hadn't played for such a long time. I mean, sometimes you had to almost hold him back sometimes because he just wanted to stay and practice and shoot non-stop. And you had to remind him almost, Mike, you're coming back from such a long time out. But certainly his performances down the stretch, he really helped our team. And I mean, obviously, I don't have to even go about the second leg against Manchester. I mean, that's in the history books basically right there. So.
Is that the moment I know when you did an interview with Sky Sports and you said that your favourite Flyers moment was that Newcastle comeback in the playoffs 2018. Has that game, do you feel, that second leg against Manchester, is that now your new favourite Flyers ever moment?
To be honest, it's pretty much the same. I think Drew Lasker asked me that, I think, for Sky Sports as well. Every achievement we have is slightly different, right? Certainly, that was a great moment. I mean, you go away from that game and you think, is this the Flyers' greatest moment? And I mean, then you start thinking kind of thing about it, and all these things are going. I mean, the Newcastle, when we did it in 17-18, Newcastle were one of the favorites to go and win the whole thing. So you got to remember that. So that was an incredible achievement. And the way we did it in that second leg, from the get-go, we had made it clear. I think certainly this was the most exciting finish, I would say, because it was literally, down to that basket basically, and that block that Malcolm made afterwards. So certainly up there. I think that shot, you look back at that shot because you're thinking about the last time out. And don't forget, a lot of people have been talking about, inbounding the ball at the end. Yeah. And, we saw something at the last, in the first leg against Manchester, and we went to it. Raf got the ball to Mike. And at the time when you see that shot, you thought, okay, he had some space. You look back at it on the video, and that shot was tough. But you know what? When that ball left his hands and that ball was up in the air, you're going, this is going in. Like
you can see Lloyd Gardner calling a timeout straight away.
You see Lloyd. As soon as that ball, your first reaction is like, there's like 6 or 7 seconds. Mike, you can go to the rim, and then he just puts it up there, and you're going, this is going in. So and then when that ball goes through the net, the whole place erupts. It was certainly one of the most exciting moments, and it's up there. And if it does replay Newcastle, or at the end of the day, they're going to be up there as some of the greatest moments, and it's certainly one of the most exciting moments that we had at the Wise campus.
Nick, was that the same for you? What do you feel?
It's different. I think the thing about the Newcastle one, it was the first time we beat Newcastle. I think it was 17th game, first win, and it was the first time we'd got to the championship last fall, and the first time's always special. It's never and I think and we were the highest seed against Manchester, so I think all of that, the Newcastle game is still the Newcastle game. You're not changing that. This was different though, I think because it was the last 2 plays, wasn't it? Which the Newcastle game wasn't quite. Although we still talk about that Jordan Davis 3, don't we?
Yeah.
But yeah,
it was.
You remember those. So it's up there, but it hasn't surpassed it. Well, I think to do that, we'll have to get a bit further.
And the Malcolm block had a little bit of a Greg Street versus Plymouth, Josh Wiltshire moment type of thing. But obviously that was a different context as well. It was league play kind of thing versus playoffs kind of thing. So it was just 2 incredible basketball plays.
And in the very unlikely event that Chris Bourne is listening to this podcast, I'm sure he isn't, can I just point out to Chris that he blocked it in bounds? And the Zach block against Newcastle as well, he blocked it in bounds. I've been saying, I do think for statisticians, if you block it out of bounds, you should only get half a block. I know that would probably mean Kyler Kelly will lose the block title, but blocking about, I keep saying it, Chris, it don't count. You got to block the thing and get the ball back. He did throw it away again, didn't he? But we know.
Oh my God! It was just like going, keep the ball, and don't pass it in the middle of the floor as well. So, that game, wow, the buzz. Just the buzz. Just when that buzzer went off, and the emotions. I think my hair's kind of. I can just remember the feeling for that. That was just spectacular.
You're listening to the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
So just as we kind of start to wrap things up, what do the next few days look like? So we've just finished, at the time of recording, we've just been knocked out of the playoffs on Sunday. This is the first full week after that game. We had a team meeting, didn't we, at the start of the week, which I thought was a really good meeting. Like, everyone went around the circle and everyone said one final bit, and it actually got quite emotional at times, didn't it?
It did get emotional. We have to say these guys represented the club and the city of Bristol in an incredible manner. The heart, the passion, the commitment, a real care for the club and the program, and it means a lot to the program. So, and full credit has to go to these guys basically, and there's so many people that this means so much to, and I think. When you go in that setting, everyone wants to say thank you. And, we had a special season, and certainly it was a great way to wrap things up. There's the emotion after the London loss in the change room. You're speaking to guys, and it's not, you needed a couple of days almost to step back. And then Tuesday was the right time. And it was great. Everyone went around. And, it's a great way to wrap things. And in terms of what's happening now, I mean, it's busy. It's busy. I mean, these last 48 hours have been busy in terms of phone calls, emails. I mean, you're either in season or you're preparing for next season. I think that's kind of the mode that you go from a coaching perspective if people want an insight. I mean, we need a break. I think we need to review things. I think there's a lot of things that need to be done. But at the same time, work is already underway for next season. If it's speaking to players, if it's speaking to agents, basically there's a lot of things that it never stops. But everyone needs a bit of a break and decompressing. I think the word decompress came about in a few conversations, and we have a bit of social time as well with the team. We had a Nando's yesterday. What was it yesterday? Wednesday. There's been a few Nando's meals. I think this one was earned by TJ. I said when he was about to shoot it, that's not going in. I said Nando's, and as the ball was on there, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give another Nando's here. I think so.
Other food outlets are available.
So Nando's, if you're listening as well, and you want to dish some food over to us for the podcast, that'd be great.
So so there is a little bit of that. Obviously, we're looking forward to the end of season gathering at Village Hotel on Monday. Just a bit of time to relax. There's work to be done. I think that's how these last few days have been really, and certainly some of the guys will be going home soon, which is you're in the season, and there's the grind of the season. Then suddenly you get to the end of it, and it's boom, one thing after the other, and suddenly everyone is dispersing. So that's always a strange feeling, really, especially for such a close group as well.
Have you had a chance to have your one-to-one meetings with players before they go? Because it is that point, isn't it, where a lot of people don't really realise, the listener, but a lot of these players sign one-year contracts every year. So essentially every summer you're now negotiating new deals with every player. Is there anything you can give us at all? Any early conversations there?
Yeah, we have had some individual meetings already and speaking. I mean, hopefully we're going to have some announcements coming out very soon. I think everyone just needs a little bit of time, I mean, it's natural. I mean, we're talking, we have some younger players on the team, aspirations, where they want to progress and everything. I mean, for us, obviously, this has been a historic season for the club, a lot of achievements to be proud of, and certainly maintaining a strong core of the squad is a goal of ours. There's some discussions that need to take place, and I think we'll see how things plan out over the summer. We want to keep on progressing, and for us, what that looks like is certainly retaining members of the squad, but also, we're very proud for people moving on and achieving greater things. One of the players last year, Eric Lockett, is with Aris this year in Greece, and it's just great to see him playing at that level. So certainly it's not just about players staying here with us, is about their progress and their journey as well, and we want them to play at the highest level possible, and I think it speaks very well about us as a club as well when you have those success stories for players. So I think hopefully we can have most of our guys returning, and we want to build on our next season now. You don't want to take steps back. Certainly we don't want to take steps back. We want to keep on moving forward. The goal is to win a BBL championship. We said that from day one, so we've got to continue building towards that.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to realise as well that a lot of the guys that we recruited this year were unproven. They're rookies, so they're unproven at a professional level. Some cases haven't played for a year because of COVID or longer, even in some cases. And of course, at the end of this year, they're not unproven anymore, and therefore their stock goes up, and there'll be a lot of clubs looking at them as well. So it's, we, as Andreas said, we want to try and retain a core, the best core that we can. But the reality is, some of those players have done really well this year, haven't they? They've really advertised their own skills, their own ability, their own professionalism. So we have to see how it goes.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this or not, but Am I right in thinking the eligibility for American players is changing next year? So obviously this year you're allowed to have up to 4. Last year you were allowed to have up to 4 Americans. Am I right in thinking that now goes up to 5 from the start of next season?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this past season we had 4 import spots, which were international players, and then you were still allowed to have 1 EU player. And I think to bring it up to speed a little bit with Brexit and everything, I think there's been the decision to have 5 import spots. So, if you have an EU player, they will count as an import in effect. So that's going to be the 5 import spots. So certainly players could decide to bring 5 American players if you wanted to say that. I think it comes down. I don't think it affects it too much. I think it gives an opportunity for teams that are playing in Europe, like London, to just add another player to their roster, basically. So I think all BBL clubs have aspirations in terms of playing in European competition, and I think certainly that will help. We want to make sure we develop British talent, and I think all teams will be thinking that there is budget considerations, and you want to see some of the best British players, if they're playing abroad, to come back home and play here. So I think clubs are working towards that. I don't think it affects much in the league, and I don't think all teams necessarily will use those import spots. There will be some teams that will, some teams that will not. But I think it brings us up to speed to some other of the top European leagues, and I think it's a positive thing, and it's down to the individual clubs how they want to approach their recruitment in that regard.
Last question. Now that the season's over and everything's all said and done, are you guys getting away at all? Are you getting an actual holiday as such? Are you guys going away abroad? What are we saying?
Well, I mean, Nick.
I'm retired. I did.
He's retired.
Holiday.
He's playing golf and.
Yeah, I mean the Flyers is like having a part-time job, which for me it was in lockdown. It was a lifesaver because I don't know what I'd have done in last year without coming to Flyers. It was just great to have something to do, but it did sort of mean coming up most days of the week. I mean, 5 days a week I'd be up doing something, whether it was at the weekends or whatever. And this season doing the same, I'm suddenly sort of aware of thinking that rather gets in the way of me doing other things. And I say, hang on, I've got to enjoy my retirement there. So I'm actually going to find out this summer how I'm going to adapt to retired life for the first time, I think. So we'll see. I'll get back to you. Ask me in September what I've been doing if I'm still here, if I come back, if I remember what basketball's about. I don't know.
And I think certainly, I think there is a danger sometimes when you finish the season to go straight into the next season. So there is got to be work to be done, and as the emails are flooding and like looking at players and all those kind of things, I think that's got to be part of the process. But need some time to relax and spend some time with my wife Ursula and our dog Ruby, so that's for sure. And some of you might have seen photos and stuff. So like she keeps us entertained. So we're gonna have some downtime. I've got some national team stuff as well. So there's got to be going some important games. Turkey, Greece for the World Cup qualifiers and things like that are happening along the way. But we all need a little bit of time off for sure.
Well, we really appreciate having you on the podcast. For the listeners, we're going to have a few more episodes over the summer with maybe some club legends and other people, etc. But we hope that you will join us for a pre-season podcast in sort of September time. Does that sound something you'd like to do?
If I'm still required, yeah.
Very good stuff. Andreas, Nick, thank you so much for joining us on the Bristol Flyers podcast. Congratulations again on a fantastic season, and hope you enjoy your off-season.